The smell hit me first. Not right away, but when it came, there was no mistaking it. Like something caught between decay and chemicals. The kind of smell that doesn't belong in our world. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'd been working late in the garage, my welder's torch throwing sparks against the frame of my '86 Chevy. It was almost midnight when the power flickered. Once, twice, then held steady. I didn't think much of it. Living 20 miles outside of town, power surges aren't exactly rare. The radio station faded into static for a moment, then returned with a different song. I remember thinking that was odd. That was 6 months ago. 6 months since I've had a full night's sleep. 6 months of looking over my shoulder, checking locks twice, 3 times before bed. 6 months of trying to convince myself that what happened was just stress, exhaustion, maybe even a small stroke. The doctors found nothing. Friends stopped calling after I canceled plans one too many times. My ex-wife suggested therapy again. But how do you explain something like this to a therapist without ending up medicated or committed? The garage is detached from the house, about 50 yards across the back lawn. That night, when I finally packed up my tools, the yard seemed darker than usual. The motion sensor light by the back door didn't trigger when I walked toward it. I remember tapping it with my hand, thinking the bulb had gone. That's when I noticed the silence. Complete silence. No crickets, no distant highway noise, not even the hum of the refrigerator that usually greeted me through the kitchen window. I stood there, key in hand, staring at the back door. Something felt wrong. That animal part of your brain that evolved to sense danger. It was screaming at me, but there was nothing to see, nothing to hear. Then the smell came. Just a hint at first, like ozone after a lightning strike, but underneath it something rotten, something wrong. I thought maybe a raccoon had died under the porch, or a sewage backup. I turned my flashlight toward the foundation of the house but saw nothing unusual. I almost made it inside. Had my hand on the doorknob when the prickling started at the back of my neck. The feeling of being watched is such a cliché until you actually experience it. It's not imaginary. Your body knows. The hairs on my arms stood up, and I couldn't move. Physically could not force my muscles to turn around. The smell grew stronger. Thick, almost oily in the air. My ears popped like when you drive up a mountain road, and the silence seemed to deepen, to press against my eardrums. I stood frozen, hand still on the doorknob, for what felt like minutes, but might have been seconds. When I finally found the courage to turn, there was nothing behind me. Just the dark yard, the outline of the garage, and the tree line beyond. But the beam of my flashlight, I'll never forget this. It didn't reach the trees. The light just stopped, about 20 feet in front of me as if it hit an invisible wall. Beyond that was just darkness, not night darkness, something deeper. I don't remember going inside. The next clear memory I have is sitting at my kitchen table, fully dressed, hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee. The microwave clock read 5:37 a.m. I'd lost almost 6 hours. My clothes smelled like that strange chemical rot odor, and my boots were caked with mud up to the ankles, though the ground had been dry for weeks. On my left wrist, just below my watch, were 3 small marks in a perfect triangle. They looked like burns, tiny and precise. They didn't hurt. I told myself I'd fallen asleep in the garage, walked in my sleep, had some kind of episode brought on by the welding fumes or exhaustion. I almost believed it, until I found the mud trail leading from my back door to the bathroom. Until I saw my dirty clothes in the hamper, clothes I have no memory of removing. Until I noticed the droplets of something black on the bathroom floor that dissolved into nothing when I tried to clean them. I called in sick that day, sat in my living room with all the lights on and tried to piece together what had happened. Checked my phone, my computer for any clues. Found nothing except that my phone's battery had completely drained despite being fully charged the night before. For a week I convinced myself it was some kind of fugue state, stress, maybe early onset dementia. I even made a doctor's appointment, went through a battery of tests, clean bill of health, physically. The doctor suggested I might be experiencing anxiety attacks and recommended a psychiatrist. I might have let it go, might have accepted the rational explanation. But then I found the footage. I've got one of those doorbell cameras, the kind that records when it detects motion. I hadn't thought to check it. Who looks at security footage when they think they've had a mental break? But I was deleting old alerts when I noticed the gap. Between 11:53 p.m. and 5:22 a.m., there were no recordings. Not even when motion should have triggered it as I returned to the house. Just a 6-hour void. Except for one clip. Time-stamped 3:14 a.m., 4 seconds long. The image is mostly dark, but you can see the corner of my porch and part of the yard. There's nothing there. Nothing moving. But the audio? I've listened to it 100 times now. There's a low hum, almost below hearing range. And underneath it, just barely audible, a sound like breathing. Not human breathing. More like something pushing air through a tube or filter. And words. Whispered, distorted, but definitely words. I've played it for 2 friends. One heard nothing. The other refused to talk to me afterward, blocked my number. I hear it though. 3 words, repeated twice. Still viable subject. I've been keeping a journal since then. Recording everything strange, the power fluctuations, the gaps in my memory, the strange bruises I wake up with. The dreams of being watched by something just outside my field of vision. The feeling that something was changed in my house while I was sleeping or away. 3 nights ago, it happened again. Same scenario. Working late. Power fluctuation. That smell. But this time I remembered pieces. Fragments that don't fit together. Standing in my backyard, unable to move. Lights over the tree line, but not from above. From within the trees themselves. The sound of footsteps in wet grass circling me. That breathing sound. And eyes. I couldn't see faces or bodies, just reflective eyes. Too large, too wide apart to be animal or human. I woke up in my bed this time. 6 a.m. 6 more missing hours. The marks on my wrist were there again. In exactly the same place, but darker. Joined by a new mark on my ankle. A perfect circle the size of a dime with a smaller circle inside it. I'm not crazy. I know how this sounds, believe me. If someone told me this story a year ago, I'd have nodded politely and avoided them afterward. But I know what I experienced. What I'm still experiencing. Last night, I sat up with my grandfather's old shotgun across my lap. Didn't turn off the lights. Didn't close my eyes. And nothing happened. No visitors. No missing time. But when I finally dozed off around dawn, I dreamed of a room. White, sterile, metal tables. And that smell. That thick, rotten chemical smell. So strong I gagged in my sleep. I woke up with the taste of copper in my mouth and 3 words echoing in my mind. Harvesting comes soon. I started recording myself at night. Set up an old camcorder in the corner of my bedroom, another in the hallway. Not the smartest setup, but I'm not exactly tech savvy. I needed to see what was happening during those lost hours. Needed something concrete to prove to myself I wasn't losing my mind. The first 3 nights, nothing happened. The 4th night, the camera shut off at 1:22 a.m. Both of them, simultaneously. When I checked the tapes the next morning, the last frame showed a strange distortion, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. I hadn't lost any time that night, but I'd slept deeper than usual. Woke up exhausted. I called Mike, an old buddy from my construction days who'd gone into electrical work. Didn't tell him why, just said I was having power issues. He checked the whole house, found nothing wrong except a strange reading near the breaker box. Electromagnetic interference, he said. Something's messing with your current. Might be the power company's equipment. He promised to call them for me. 2 days later, Mike stopped answering my calls. When I ran into his wife at the grocery store, she looked at me like I was a stranger, walked the other way when she saw me coming. I'm not paranoid by nature. Never believed in conspiracy theories or supernatural stuff. But when your friends start avoiding you, when you wake up with unexplained marks on your body, when you lose entire chunks of time, you start questioning everything. I went to the library, used their computer to research. Didn't want whatever I was looking for to be tracked to my home network. I started with medical conditions, temporal lobe epilepsy, dissociative episodes, parasomnia. None of it matched exactly what I was experiencing. Then I looked up missing time experiences. That's when things got strange. So many stories, so many similar details. The smell, the marks, the feeling of being watched. People from all walks of life, all over the world, describing almost exactly what I'd been through. Some called it alien abduction, others government experiments. Some thought they were being targeted by cults or experiencing demonic oppression. I'm not saying I believe in aliens. I'm still not sure what I believe. But those stories, they hit too close to home to dismiss entirely. I printed a few articles, folded them into my wallet. A small comfort, knowing I wasn't completely alone in this. but also terrifying. If this was happening to others, what did that mean? What was the purpose? Last Tuesday, I drove out to where Mike lives, parked down the street, and waited. When I saw him come home, I approached him in his driveway. He looked terrified when he saw me, kept glancing at his house like he was afraid someone inside would see us talking. "You need to stop," he whispered. "They came to see me after I was at your place. Asked questions." "Who came to see you?" I asked. He just shook his head. "Men. Government types. They knew things, Adam. Things I never told anyone." He looked over his shoulder again. "They said you were part of a program, that you're experiencing delusions as a side effect of PTSD from Desert Storm. Said as your friend, I should encourage you to take the medication they prescribed." "What program?" "I'm not on any medication," I said. The fear in his eyes was real. "Please just go. I have a family." Then he hurried inside. I sat in my truck for almost an hour, trying to make sense of what he'd said. Government men? A program? I'd been through standard military training, nothing experimental, and I'd never been prescribed psychiatric medication. That night I packed a bag, decided to drive to my son's place in Ohio. Needed to get away, clear my head. I made it about 20 miles before the headaches started, blinding pain behind my eyes. The road in front of me blurred. I pulled over thinking I might be having a stroke. That's when I noticed the black SUV that had been following me. It stopped about 100 yards back. The pain intensified until I couldn't keep my eyes open. Then the smell came again. That rot chemical smell. So strong I gagged. I fumbled for my phone, but my fingers wouldn't work right. The last thing I remember is a figure approaching my truck, silhouetted against headlights. I woke up in my own bed. According to my phone, 2 days had passed. My truck was in the driveway, keys on the nightstand. Gas tank full, though I distinctly remember being nearly on empty when I left. The bag I'd packed was back in my closet, clothes neatly folded inside. On my kitchen table was a bottle of pills. The label said, "For anxiety, take as needed," with my name and a doctor I'd never heard of. No pharmacy name, no other information. I flushed the pills. All of them. Whatever was happening, I needed my mind clear. That's when I remembered something. A fragment of memory from one of those missing nights. A voice, not quite human, saying, "Subject shows unusual resistance to cognitive barriers." Another memory surfaced. Cold metal under my back. A light, painfully bright above me. Shadows moving around me. And that smell. Always that smell. I started checking my body more thoroughly after that. Found a small, perfectly straight scar behind my ear that I'm certain wasn't there before. Barely visible unless you were looking for it. When I pressed on it, I felt something hard underneath, about the size of a grain of rice. Yesterday, I took a razor blade, sterilized it with a lighter, and made a small incision over that hard spot. The pain was intense but clarifying. Blood ran down my neck, but I kept going, using tweezers to extract whatever was embedded there. It was metal, tiny, smaller than I'd thought. Silver-colored with a blue sheen like oil on water. Not quite rectangular with rounded edges. No visible seams or components. I dropped it into a glass jar and sealed it tight. Within an hour, the headaches returned. Worse than before. My nose started bleeding, wouldn't stop. I could barely stand from the vertigo. But my mind felt clearer than it had in months. I'm writing this now as a record in case something happens to me. The jar with that thing is hidden where I hope they won't find it. I've set up new cameras, better ones with cloud backup that uploads in real time. The sun is setting. That seems to be when they come most often. The power just flickered, and my ears are starting to feel pressurized. I think they know what I removed. I think they're coming back for it. And God help me. Part of me wants to know what happens next. What they've been doing to me all these months. What they want. The smell is back. Stronger than ever. I need to backtrack a bit. There's something I haven't mentioned. Something I've been trying not to think about because it means this didn't start 6 months ago. It started decades ago. When I was 9, I spent a summer at my grandparents' farm, this same farm where I'm living now. I'd forgotten so much of that summer. Or maybe I'd made myself forget. 3 nights after I removed that thing from behind my ear, the memories started coming back. Not all at once. Fragments like watching a damaged film reel. Frames missing. Scenes out of order. I remembered waking up one night to that same smell. The same feeling of pressure in my ears. I was sleeping in what's now my bedroom. It was my mom's childhood room back then. I remembered the paralysis, being unable to call out as a blue-white light filled the windows. The door opening but not showing the hallway beyond. Instead, just brightness. I remembered floating, being carried by something I couldn't quite see. Like my eyes refused to focus on the figures. I remembered a round room with walls that seemed alive, humming. Other children there too. Silent, eyes wide with terror. I didn't remember everything that happened in that room. Maybe that's a mercy. But I remembered after, being back in bed, a voice in my head saying, "Forget until ready. Forget until needed." And I did forget. Until now. Yesterday, I drove to my parents' old storage unit, paid the overdue fees and dug through boxes of family belongings, found my childhood journals, small notebooks with faded blue covers. I hadn't remembered keeping journals, but there they were, in my childish handwriting. Most entries were ordinary. Baseball games, school friends, TV shows I liked. But every few months there was a single page where the handwriting changed slightly, became more precise, less like a child's scrawl. Those pages always began with the same phrase, "I must record to remember." What followed were clinical descriptions of experiences like the one I'd just remembered. Lights, the smell, floating, the round room, and always, the instructions to forget afterward. The entries continued through my teenage years, becoming less frequent but more detailed. The last one was dated 2 weeks before I enlisted in the Army at 18. It ended with, "They say it's the last collection until I'm needed. I'm being prepared for something important, something that will happen when I'm older. I'm 50 now. Is this what they were preparing me for?" I packed the journals carefully in my truck. Decided to visit my ex-wife Karen and our kids in Ohio after all. Not to stay with them, I wouldn't put them at risk, but to warn them. To show Karen the journals, the scar, my recent notes. To make her understand this wasn't just a mental breakdown or PTSD. I made it all the way this time. 6 hours of driving, constantly checking my mirrors for black SUVs. Nothing followed me that I could see. The headaches came and went, but I pushed through. Karen was surprised to see me, not happy exactly, but not hostile either. She's remarried now, to an accountant named Steve. Nice enough guy. He made himself scarce while Karen and I talked at their kitchen table. I tried to explain everything calmly, rationally. Showed her the journals, the marks on my wrist, the scar behind my ear where I'd removed the implant. Told her about the missing time, the strange encounters, Mike's warning. I could see in her eyes she didn't believe me. Not really, but she was worried. Kept asking if I was taking care of myself, if I'd talked to a doctor. "You always had nightmares," she said. "After Iraq, you'd wake up saying someone was in the room. This is different," I insisted. She sighed, pushed one of the journals back toward me. "Adam, you need help. Professional help. These journals, you wrote these recently, didn't you? To convince me?" "What? No, these are from when I was a kid. Look at the dates, the handwriting." She shook her head. "The handwriting is the same as your notes from last week, and they're all written in the same pen." She pointed to the pages. "Look closely." She was right. What I'd taken for faded ink from decades ago was the same blue ballpoint I'd been using all week. The yellowed pages weren't old. They'd been stained with tea or coffee to look aged. My mind reeled. Had I created all of this? Written an elaborate fantasy, and convinced myself it was recovered memory? I left Karen's house in a daze. She made me promise to see a psychiatrist. Gave me a name. Someone who specialized in PTSD and delusions. I agreed just to appease her. Halfway home, I pulled over at a rest stop, examined those journals more carefully. They were fakes, I could see that now, but I hadn't created them. Someone else had. The handwriting matched mine perfectly, but there were subtle differences in how certain letters were formed. Differences only Karen, who'd received my letters during deployments for years, would notice. I was being gaslit. By whom? The government men Mike mentioned? The beings themselves? I didn't know, but it meant I wasn't imagining everything. Someone was trying very hard to make me doubt myself, to make others doubt me. That's when I noticed the car. Dark blue sedan, 2 men inside, watching me from across the parking lot. When they saw me looking, they didn't try to hide. One of them smiled and lifted a hand in greeting like we were old friends. I got back on the road. They followed, keeping a consistent distance, not trying to be subtle anymore. My phone rang, unknown number. I answered on speaker. "Mr. Mitchell," a man's voice said. No introduction. We need that device you removed. It's dangerous to you and others. Who is this? I demanded. Someone concerned for your welfare. The delusions are getting worse. We can help. They're not delusions. And you know it. A pause. The device, Mr. Mitchell. Return it. Take the medication we provided and this ends. You go back to your normal life. I hung up. Turned off my phone completely. Removed the battery for good measure. The blue car stayed with me all the way back to the farm. Parked at the end of my driveway. A clear message. We're watching. We're waiting. Inside the house, I went straight to where I'd hidden the small metal object I'd cut from my neck. The jar was still there, but empty. Just like they'd known I'd gone to Karen's, they'd known where to look. Yet they were still outside, waiting. What did they want now? As night fell, they remained at the end of my driveway. I loaded my shotgun. Not that it would do much good against whatever I was dealing with, but its weight was comforting. The power went out at 9:17 p.m. My emergency generator didn't kick in, though I'd tested it just days before. I lit candles, sat in my living room, shotgun across my knees, watching the driveway through the window. The men in the car didn't move, didn't approach the house, just waited. At midnight exactly, the smell returned. That thick, rotten odor that I'd come to dread. My ears popped. The silence deepened. Outside, beyond the car at my driveway, lights appeared in the sky. Not aircraft lights. Something else. The men got out of their car, looked up. They weren't surprised. They were waiting for this. One of them turned toward my house, staring directly at my window, though he couldn't possibly see me in the darkness. He smiled again. That's when I realized they weren't here to take me. They were here to witness, to observe. The smell grew stronger. The lights descended. I'm recording this from a motel somewhere in West Virginia. I won't say exactly where. Not that it matters. They'll find me eventually. They always do. But I need to finish this account while I still remember everything. While I still can. That night, when the lights descended beyond the men in the blue car, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be passive anymore. I wasn't going to wait for whatever came next. I grabbed my go bag, the one I'd packed days earlier, and slipped out the back door of the house. The men were focused on the lights, their backs to me. I kept to the shadows, moved along the tree line until I reached the old access road that cuts through the back of the property. My truck was still in the driveway, too risky to take. Instead, I'd hidden my neighbor's dirt bike in the storage shed earlier that day. He rarely used it. Probably wouldn't notice it missing for days. I pushed it a quarter mile before starting it, then took off through the fields. I rode for hours, avoiding main roads, keeping to farm lanes and forest paths I'd known since childhood. Eventually hit a highway, abandoned the bike at a truck stop, and hitched a ride with a long-haul trucker heading south. Older guy didn't ask questions when I said I was having family troubles. Dropped me at this motel just before dawn. The first thing I noticed when I checked the mirror in the motel bathroom was that the scar behind my ear, the one where I'd removed the implant, was gone. Completely healed, not even a mark. As if it had never been there at all. I ran my fingers over the spot again and again. Felt nothing beneath the skin. But I know what I removed. I know it was real. The second thing I noticed was a new mark. On my chest, over my heart. A perfect circle, about the size of a quarter, with intricate patterns inside it. Not a tattoo exactly. More like the skin had been altered at a cellular level. It didn't hurt. Didn't itch. But when I touched it, images flashed in my mind. The round room from my childhood memories. The clinical table. Faces I still couldn't quite focus on, but sensed rather than saw. I spent that first day sleeping in fitful bursts, jolting awake at every sound outside my room. Ordered pizza delivery but couldn't eat more than a few bites. The smell, that distinctive rot chemical smell, seemed embedded in my nostrils now, faint but persistent. When night fell, I wedged a chair under the doorknob, closed the cheap curtains tight, and sat on the bed with my back to the wall. Sleep wasn't an option. I needed to stay alert, stay ready. Around 3 a.m., my burner phone rang. I hadn't given the number to anyone. "You can't run from this, Adam," a familiar voice said when I answered. The same man from the car. "You're part of something larger than yourself. Something vital. What do you want from me?" My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hoarse and distant. "It's not what we want," the man said. "It's what they need. You're special to them. You always have been. since they first identified your genetic markers as a child. Who are they? A soft laugh. You know who. You've seen them even if your mind won't let you process their true appearance. They've been preparing you your entire life. For what? Communication. Connection. You're a bridge, Adam, one of several dozen across the globe. Your particular neurological structure allows you to perceive them without the adverse effects most humans experience in their presence. I thought of the other children I'd glimpsed in my recovered memories. The others like me, what happened to them? Silence for a moment. Some couldn't handle the adjustments. Some rejected the implants. Others served their purpose. And what's my purpose? I demanded. Another pause. Integration. You're ready now. The final stage. The call disconnected. I tried calling back, but the number was already out of service. I sat in the dark motel room, trying to make sense of it all. Integration. The final stage. The words echoed in my mind, taking on an almost physical presence. Just before dawn, I dozed off despite my best efforts to stay awake. In that twilight between sleeping and waking, I remembered something else. Something crucial. I wasn't 9 when it first happened. I was younger. Much younger. In my earliest memory, I'm standing in a crib. It's night. That smell is there. And the pressure in my ears. A figure bends over me. Tall, impossibly thin. Its head too large, eyes too widely spaced. But there's something almost tender in the way it reaches for me with elongated fingers. Special one, a voice says in my mind. Not in English, not in any human language, but I understand it nonetheless. You will help them understand when the time comes. The memory shifts. I'm older, maybe 7, in that round room with the humming walls. One of the beings is showing me something, a sort of screen or window into what looks like the future. Images of environmental collapse, war, suffering, then other images. Humanity changed, adapted, living in harmony with technologies beyond our current understanding. 2 possible paths. This is why, the being explains without speaking, this is why we need bridges, to guide them toward survival. I woke fully with those words echoing in my mind. For the first time in months, I felt a strange sense of calm, of purpose. The mark on my chest had changed. The pattern within the circle was shifting subtly, like liquid metal moving beneath my skin. When I touched it, I no longer saw fragments of memory. Instead, I saw possibilities, futures, as if the mark was a window similar to what I'd been shown as a child. I understood then what they wanted, not to harm us, not to invade or conquer, but to guide us away from self-destruction. They'd been watching humanity for centuries, perhaps millennia, identifying individuals with the rare genetic makeup that allowed direct communication with them, preparing us, adjusting us, so we could serve as interpreters, bridges. Outside my motel window, a car pulled up. The blue sedan. I wasn't afraid anymore. I knew why they'd been following me, watching me, making sure I reached this point of understanding before the final stage. The mark on my chest pulsed once, warm against my skin. In my mind, I heard voices. Thousands of them, human and non-human alike. A vast network of consciousness that spanned farther than I could comprehend. I was being integrated into it, becoming a node in a communication system beyond human technology. The men from the car knocked on my door. I opened it without hesitation. It's time, one of them said. I nodded. I know. As I walked with them to the car, the mark on my chest grew warmer. The voices in my mind grew clearer. I was still myself, still Adam Mitchell, former construction worker, ex-husband, father. But I was becoming something more too. A conduit, a translator between species. In the back seat of the car, one of the men handed me a small device, similar to a smartphone but with no visible buttons or features. They're ready to speak to a wider audience, he said. Through you. Are you prepared for that responsibility? I took the device. As my fingers touched it, the screen flickered to life, showing patterns similar to the mark on my chest. The voices in my mind unified into a single, clear message. Yes, I said. I've been prepared my whole life. The smell returned one last time. Not repulsive anymore, just foreign. Different. I realized it had never been a smell of decay or chemicals. It was simply the scent of something from beyond our world. Something ancient and vast and utterly alien to human senses. We're not alone in the universe, we never have been. And they don't want us to destroy ourselves before we're ready to join them. That's why I'm sharing this now. That's why they've allowed me to tell my story. The integration has begun, not just for me, but potentially for all of humanity. The question isn't whether you believe me. The question is whether you're ready for what comes next. If you've ever smelled something you couldn't identify, felt watched when no one was there, lost time you couldn't account for, you might be part of this too. Check behind your ear. Look for the marks. Listen to the silence between your thoughts. They're coming for all of us eventually, not to harm but to help, to save us from ourselves. And I'm their messenger. If you've experienced something similar to what I've shared today, hit that subscribe button and join our community. Your story might be the missing piece we need to understand the bigger picture. Have you ever experienced missing time or unexplainable marks on your body? Share your experiences in the comments below.